Hi, I'm Angela and I'm here with
Chief Patrick Burke.
Doug Burgess.
and I'm going to ask them a few questions. Question 1. What area of service were or are you in?
I was in the Navy. I enlisted in the Navy when I was in high school under a program that let me complete high school. And I got an appointment to the United States Naval Academy and got my college degree there. And then I served 6 years in the Navy.
That's cool.
I enlisted in the United States Marine Corps about 23 years ago. I served 5 years in the Marine Corps. And then after that, I transferred over to the Air Force, and I've spent the last 18 plus years as a member of the Air Force. I grew up in Lynn. I live here in Swampscott with my lovely wife and children and my son Quinn, who goes here to the middle school.
That's nice to hear. Question 2. For how long have you been in the service?
Well, I served after graduation for 6 years in the Navy. And I also joined the reserves after I ended my active duty. But I also count my time at the Naval Academy and my reserve time before I went to the Academy. So all told, I have 12 years of service. And I forgot to tell you that my daughter's a teacher here at your school.
That's cool.
As I said, I've got 23 years total service. I've been a traditional reservist, which means I go away on my weekends, but I've got 5 deployments. I've got 4 combat deployments to the Middle East, and I've spent about almost 3 years of my life over in the Middle East. So when I'm not on military duty, I work over in Lynn at GE. So 23 years total service.
Okay, that's nice. Question 3. What leads you into going into the military?
There used to be a program on television long before you were watching television called Men of Annapolis. And I loved that program. I watched it every week. It was about students at the Naval Academy. And I decided then, I was probably 8 or 9 years old, that that's what I wanted to do, was go to the Naval Academy and be in the Navy. And I was lucky enough to be able to do that.
Really cool.
I enlisted in the Marine Corps because of two people. One, my grandfather, who was in the Marine Corps during World War II, and my uncle Ed, who was in the Army in Vietnam. So much like this hero that I'm sitting next to right now, my uncle Ed was one of my heroes along with my grandfather. So those two had a great influence. I always said if my grandfather could do it, I could do it. And my uncle, with his service, I was just so in awe of Vietnam vets. I said, I need to do this. So my uncle and my grandfather were my reason for joining.
That's good inspiration. Question 4. What was your experience like, or what did you do?
I spent most of my career in surface ships that the Navy calls surface warfare, on destroyers, a destroyer being a small combatant ship. And I made 2 deployments to Vietnam. One of those was on a swift boat, which is a very small boat that's used for coastal and inland patrol in Vietnam. And I really enjoyed it. And even the swift boat, although it was a wartime experience, it was a unique opportunity for me to be in charge of a small ship with a crew. And that part of it was really awesome. I really enjoyed that responsibility.
It's a really cool experience.
My experience overseas has been as a logistics senior non-commissioned officer, which means, much like this hero, I was leading men and women. Our job was to bring in supplies and people and equipment for the men and women that were out doing the actual fighting. We also made sure if anybody was wounded or anything going home, we got them on planes to safely get them home. My last tour, interestingly enough, I was attached to the Army, so that was a little different than usual. We went out and we closed bases. We would visit an Afghan or a U.S. base, and we would basically close it down. So it was pretty dangerous, but it was very rewarding because you were in charge of a small, close-knit team, and you learned a lot about teamwork and about what you're made of because you were always pushing yourself. So that's my experience.
That's really cool.
Could I add something that Mr. Burke's had a very
Sure.
unusual and unique career in that he served with 3 different branches of the service. He served with the Marine Corps, the Air Force, and the Army. Very few people have that diverse experience in the military.
That's really cool. Number 5. What is a veteran? What does it mean to be a veteran?
I think that it means, obviously for Mr. Burke and me, a great deal of pride for the opportunity to have served, gratitude that we both lived through it safely, compassion for our friends that didn't, and I think neither one of us would give up the experience that we've had.
Really neat.
Yep, and he nailed it. That's what I was going to say. There's a paper definition of a veteran, right? It's somebody who's served in the military, and then there's how you feel. Like when you were saying that, I was getting goosebumps. It's something you experience, something you're so proud to do, and he nailed it when you said, Doug said you would do it over again a second, no matter how hard it is or how difficult, because it brings you closer to people than you can really ever experience, and it makes a bond like this that can never be broken. So I'm sure he's got friends from the Navy from 40 years ago that would call him up today, and he'd be on a plane to go see him, much like I have friends from 20 years ago that would call me and say, hey, I need something, or I'm in town. So being a veteran puts you in that really special community of people where, we're able to give to the wider community. At the same time, we develop just unbelievable friendships.
If I could add something to that, Patrick's had some difficult combat tours. I'm sure they've changed him, but he has volunteered to go back again.
Question 6. What are some ways that Swampscott Middle School students can honor veterans?
I think that it means a lot to veterans when Swampscott school students or adults in the community come out to veteran ceremonies like Veterans Day, or last Sunday, the birthday celebration we had for Jennifer Harris, the Swampscott school student who went on to the Naval Academy and became a Marine pilot and died in Iraq. It's really, really important to see people not forget their service.
Yeah. That's a great point. I always, people always ask me how can we say thanks, and Doug nailed it. You don't forget those who went before us. We had Captain Harris recently, and we had Specialist Raymond here from town. So the way we can honor them is to never forget them. As Doug said, go out and support their family and their memorials. Also, importantly, any students that has a veteran in their family, or a neighbor, or just anybody, it's very important to thank them, to go see them. I don't see myself as any sort of hero. I look at men and women like Doug and his generation that I look up to and say that's the man or woman that I aspire to hold that standard. So just don't forget the people in the community. Say thank you, whoever they are, whether they're your uncle or your neighbor.
So that is all the time we have for today. So thank you for your service, and everyone have a great Veterans Day. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you, Andrew.